Hello, everybody. We are here live again, as we always are, every Tuesday at 1:30. Today we've got two fabulous guests and a phenomenal topic. And I have to tell you, what's special about this topic, it is an underutilized tool that hopefully after today, so many more of you are going to be comfortable talking about buyer broker agreements and utilizing buyer broker agreements. All right. Well, today we have Moss Roberts and John Williams here. And how you doing, guys?
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks. Well, I want to start off so people get to know a little bit about each of you. Moss, why don't you start off and tell them a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and we'll start there, and then John will go to you.
Hi, guys. I'm the team leader for the Tonneson team. We're usually the top three teams of the entire of Berkshire Hathaway in Las Vegas, Nevada. We went from $40 million to $100 million in sales. And my specialty is actually in recruiting. I love to recruit new agents and bring them from zero to hero.
Woohoo!
That's
Love
awesome.
it. Thanks, Moss.
Well,
John.
thank you for having me, Mark. My name is John Williams. I am at the Sahara branch, and I'm an individual agent, no team. And honestly, my specialty is just serving my clients. I like to help people, and really helping them through a transaction is the most important thing in their life. So that's what I focus on. But I'm originally from the Midwest, moved out here and fumbled through a few different careers and found my love of real estate and have been doing great ever since under the awesome help and guidance of the Berkshire family here. It's been great.
Well, thanks. And both of you, thank you for each of you taking your time to be here today. Let's jump right in with some questions. Moss, let's start with you. Why do you choose to use a buyer broker agreement?
Well, it's very simple because I work harder when I have a buyer client relationship with my clients because my time is very valuable. And also when I talk to my clients, I explain them the benefits of working with me first because of my skill level and how I'm able to negotiate. And, 90% of the time I will win multiple offers on behalf of my clients. So I demonstrate value right up in the beginning, and it makes me work harder for my clients.
Love it. Love it. John, anything to add to that?
I would have to agree. I mean, I think the number one takeaway from that is, working. And I don't want to say that I wouldn't work hard without a buyer broker, but naturally, when you know you have that confidence in the relationship, that the person you're working for respects your time and your skill level, you're going to do everything within your power to really go above and beyond for them. Whereas if you don't have that buyer broker agreement, you're going to kind of always be wondering if they're valuing your time, if they're serious, if all the work that you put in, which could be hours or it could be weeks and months, if that's going to pay off. So I think right on with what Moss is saying, it protects my time and it ensures the client gets a much better experience in it.
Yeah. It's so funny. It's obvious to people that if you're going to take a listing, you're going to have a contract to take a listing. Why it doesn't translate to, if I'm working with a buyer, I should have a buyer's contract to work with a buyer. So that's interesting. Let me ask you, John, when do you first present the BBA, the buyer broker agreement?
Of course, I would say there's always the exception to the rule. Nothing's ever perfect, but in general, as early as possible. I think right up front, being very transparent is the best practice. Now, it depends on where the buyers come from, right? Like if I'm getting a lead from somewhere, typically people want to see a property kind of right away. So what I try to do is demonstrate some value. I put myself out there saying, here, I'm going to do something for you by going and showing a property. But I'll kind of set the groundwork in our conversation for, if you want to work with me, if we click, we can discuss what it looks like to hire me and what it looks like to move forward. I'll go show the property. I'll have a blank buyer broker, duties owed with me. And after we do the showing, we'll have a little powwow and I'll just say, hey, well, what'd you guys think? How's this house work? And then how do you like me? Would you like to continue working with me? Here's some things that I'll do for you. And if they say yes, I'm like, great. And I literally pull out the buyer broker right there and I go over it. And I'm very transparent. I highlight the fees, my minimums, because I do a minimum of 3% or 6,500, whichever's greater. And then my buyer or my broker admit my BAC fee in there. And so I point those out directly and I'm like, here's my minimums. And then I explain that, typically sellers will pay the commission, but in these certain situations, you could be responsible for a portion. And I walk them through that because typically it's really, we're talking about 0.5%. Now, I mean, you might get a 2% buyout listing at some point, but generally, if it's not a 3% payout, it's going to be 2.5. So, I try to equate that to them on a $300,000 house. I'm like, look, that's going to be like $1,500, and I just make it not a big deal, because it's really not a big deal when you're buying a house of that size. I mean, $1,500 out of escrow to make sure you're getting an agent that really takes care of your needs, I think is well paid.
Well, and Mas, first of all, do you have anything to add from the standpoint of when you first present the BBA?
Yes, so most of my clients coming from my Great Las Vegas Homes website. So there are, traffic from New York, California, Arizona, everything, right? So what I do is I would build rapport on the first call. And then because they're from California, New York, and wherever, my first thing is building rapport on the first call, get them to know, like, and trust me. And I ask them a lot of questions. And then on the second, and then what I do is I set an appointment on the second call where I say what time will work for you, either Monday at 10 a.m. or Tuesday at 5 p.m. with both the spouses. I give them the close, right? Because after I've built rapport that they know, like, and trust me, then I set an appointment to talk about business. And in that business discussion, I tell them, I'm sure you want to learn how the Las Vegas market works here. And let's set up a time and we'll go over how the Las Vegas market works here. And just like John, I also 100% of the time when they sign my BBA, I always get 3%. No matter if the co-op is 2%, 3%, just like John, I always get a full 3% commission. And I also know how to negotiate with the listing agent. If in situation where it's 2.5, I actually will ask the listing agent, my buyers sign a 3% BBA with me. Are your seller willing to raise up to 3%? And then typically, if they're kind of desperate, they will raise it up to 3%. And then that way I still save my clients some money. But I use the buyer broker agreement for leverage and get paid what I'm worth.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Love that.
That is new to me. I like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, I've had the opportunity to speak to both of you offline, and I know how much each of you care about actually providing incredible value and service. How do you get this across to your buyers, okay, to let them know, okay, and get them comfortable with being, signing a buyer broker agreement when, they can choose other agents to work with that don't have that contractual relationship? How do you get that across to the buyers? How about, why don't we go to you, John?
Okay. I think, first of all, confidence in yourself and your skills and your ability. But I think it's like a lot of things personally where people, unless this person's never reached out to a single agent, it's their first experience ever, which is more rare. But typically people have had some kind of an experience in the real estate world, either it be through, somebody else's experience they've heard about, or they've called or tried to talk to other agents. And I find that, basically by just holding true to the commitment you're going to make as an agent, saying this is what I'm going to do for you, and really letting them know that by having this agreement, it commits us to working with each other. You can rely on me and I can rely on you, because there's so little accountability out there in the world today. I feel like with this is cross industry, not just real estate. And I think people really value having somebody in their corner that they can trust and rely on. That if they call that person, they're going to answer the phone, which seems like such a simple thing. But, when you get into it, lots of agents don't answer their phone, or they're not responsive or attentive. and even to their buyers, because maybe they don't take that buyer that seriously because they don't have a buyer broker. So the way I get them feeling comfortable is by being 100% transparent about it, explaining fully what it is, what it means, why I use it, and things that are involved. So that they know up front, they don't feel like they're getting any kind of shady bait and switch or anything. And then having that confidence in the service I provide, and really that's it. Just confidence and full disclosure 100% of terms and what it means and how that affects them.
That's great. Mas, what do you have to add to that? Getting your buyer comfortable.
Yeah, so my buyers, when I set the buyer broker, conversation, they'll sign my BBA in less than 15 minutes. And the reason how I do that is it start with having a servant heart, leader. So the skills of being a servant heart leader. It starts with knowing what they want instead of what we want and not being commission breath. So basically, it's very simple. All I do is I explain to them in the residential purchase agreement, and Galvar changed it about 4 years ago. Everybody was complaining about the RPA changing, but I saw an opportunity. I saw an opportunity to protect my buyers' needs. And what I did was I explained to them the way I'm going to protect your needs, and I'm going to be able to negotiate and give you the best value for your home is by watching your timelines. So what I explained to them is, if you're purchasing a $300,000 home, your earnest money deposit could be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. That's a lot of money, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. And so now you never want to say the word protect when it comes to money. I always say the word prevent when it comes to their earnest money deposit. So I say something like, there are timelines within the contract that I watch really carefully to prevent your earnest money by being at risk. And I explain to them the home inspection timeline is, typically 12 days and then 15 days for appraisal, unless it's FHA takes a bit longer. And then CIC resale package. And I watch those timeline like a hawk. So my way of getting the BPA is very, very simple, but to stay on top of, everybody, the loan officer, the escrow, the listing agent, the buyers, everything. I'm maneuvering everything in the transaction really, really well and watching those timeline. And then, so anytime my client are not comfortable, I say, hey, we're almost approaching our timeline. Are you still comfortable with the transaction? And if they're not comfortable, then I send a cancellation addendum and then get their earnest money back.
Yeah, interesting. What's very key and something that you both mentioned is, the attitude and the confidence level. And I can see you're very confident in the service that you provide. And what that has done is help you be more confident to communicate overall, and of course included in a buyer's broker agreement, to communicate that. And that's powerful. So that confidence level is coming because you're doing a good job. You're negotiating on their behalf. I love that.
Yep.
Let me ask you, John, what are some of the risks a buyer can have when they are not working under a buyer broker agreement?
Well, I think their time isn't as protected. I think the risk to the buyer could be, working with an agent that really isn't as attentive to their needs, that's more concerned with their commission and the agent's well-being. Without the buyer broker agreement, I feel like oftentimes agents are just going to be tempted to maybe kind of recommend a property that serves their commission needs better than that client. Working with somebody on buying a home is a pretty big deal. So I feel like as a buyer, if I were in their shoes, if I have worked with somebody for a little while, but I'm not feeling like I'm getting the service I deserve, then I don't really feel like I have much of a leg to stand on. But with a buyer broker agreement, there's that kind of commitment to each other, and there's expectations that are set on both sides. So I think it gives that buyer more confidence in being able to kind of demand better service. So I think the risk to a buyer would be lack of professionalism, lack of really thorough service to meet their needs 100%. And in relation to what Moz said about protecting or preventing their earnest money deposit from being lost, that's really key. Because if the agent's not that attentive, those timelines could go by and it could cause their buyer quite a bit of money and headache and frustration, and then that's going to lead to a really sour experience overall. I mean, that's just negative all over the place. So I think the risks are financial and just commitment and expectation wise.
Yeah.
If that made sense.
Sure. Moss, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so when I sit with my buyer, and the reason why they will sign my BBA sometimes in less than 5 minutes, but I also explain to them the loan process a little bit. Now, I tell them up front that I'm not a loan expert, but I've seen a lot of transaction, and my job is to think 10 steps ahead of them, because they're not, buying a purchase of a house is a big deal. So I would explain to them the simple rules of credit score, and then also the do's and don'ts of the loan process. So you guys can also work with the lender downstairs, Berkshire Hathaway. What you want to do is you grab the do's and don'ts, and then you sit with them, with the clients, and explain to them this is, because they don't know it. They don't know that they're not supposed to just go and buy furniture or put something on their credit card, or what I mean. So you have to learn to educate them. But also, when I explain to them what the down payment is, what the closing costs that they need, so they understand where that money, because they're worried about the money side and everything. And then sometimes they have the retirement account. So I explain to them the process of getting that money. Probably might take a 45 days. So I tell them about what to expect. And then I also tell them how I win multiple offer scenarios for them. So 90% of the time, I'm going to be able to win multiple offer scenario. And I explain to them the strategy that I use to win over everybody else in the multiple offer scenarios. So the risk is, if they work with somebody that is not as professional as us, those agents are not going to be able to know how to negotiate or get them the best service or the best value for the purchase of their home. I think, and that's why a lot of, realtors, they are afraid to get the buyer broker agreement, because I think they have not upgraded their skill level yet. But if you stop thinking of yourself and focus on the prospect and know your value and know your time and worth, and explain it in a way that is beneficial to the client, they will sign your contract. They will sign your BBA.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'd like to add something to that. I think, a common theme here that I'm hearing with Moss that I would agree with is, I think the key to being a good buyer's agent, period, is fully disclosing, educating the buyer. When I have sphere of influence buyers, that don't come to me like a lead does, I do what Moss does, and I'm like, well, let's talk about what you want, then let's sit down and actually have a real conversation. But in any scenario, that's what I always appreciate, is when people, really thoroughly disclose kind of everything in the process. Now, I find that typically I'll go over everything and people's eyes glaze over, and they're like, oh my gosh, so much information. And I'm like, look, I just want to give you kind of like plant that seed so you've heard this, so you're aware, but at every step of the way, reiterating that stuff and re-explaining kind of where you're at, where you're going with the transaction, because most people don't realize, or they have so many other things that are on their mind that they get distracted. And I think that's a key with getting the buyer broker as well, is being thorough in your knowledge and explanation of the process. And I think some agents maybe are scared of the BBAs because it holds you accountable to actually being thorough and really educating your client on everything.
Well, something you both mentioned, which I got to tell you, when you're in an environment of low inventory, your ability to execute effectively and get them the house. We hear from a lot of agents, well, I've had to write offer upon offer. I lost that one. I lost that one. I lost that one. I lost that one. Well, the reality of it is, the real big question is, if it was somebody else, would they have gotten one that you didn't get? That's the question of, how are you working effectively with other agents where you're getting offers accepted? Of course, that doesn't work 100% of the time. But if you're doing it a lot more often, You know what? That's a huge benefit to clients every day, specifically in an environment that we're all in, I think, all over the country with low inventory.
Hmm.
Is there any tips that you can give a buyer? Listen, not all agents, not all sales executives are created equal. What tips can you give a buyer before they do sign a buyer broker agreement? Anything you could give them as tips to kind of help them, give them a heads up before they would just sign a buyer broker agreement with anyone? Moss, anything on that?
I think it comes from their intuition about the sales individual, because a lot of buyers are on the website, on different websites, Zillow, so many of them, right? And I think it comes to their intuition about how they feel that sales professional is. And I know that because of my high level of service, I know people can feel my heart when I talk to them. So I think with the buyers, it's about using your intuition about who you want to choose to be your buyer agent, that like you say, Mark, that have them on their side.
Absolutely.
And I would agree 100% with that. I mean, in my experience, you could be the best agent ever, but if you don't click with that person, it might not work anyway. You might have a personality style clash or something. And so I would say definitely, feeling comfortable with the person just as a human to human kind of connection point of view. But also, like, how well do they communicate? As far as, are they responsive to calling you? Do they do what they say they're going to do, in their first couple interactions? And I'm a firm believer in just how you carry yourself. If I'm dealing with a service provider or another professional and they're using slang, they're not professional in the way they talk, or their answers like make me feel like they're just making something up, I'm not going to feel comfortable working with them, right? But if somebody's honest and upfront, I think that makes a huge difference, and being genuine. And I think people have a pretty good BS meter, most people, where they can see through, acts. So I think being, just looking for that person that you feel is genuine, that has your best interest in stake, is the best advice I can give. As far as anything that you can prove, I would just say, if, maybe ask a few questions, that can give you an idea of the knowledge of that agent and maybe how they would handle a situation. If a buyer has that ability or the experience to think of that, ask a couple of questions that might give the buyer indication of what that agent will do. Because I'll tell you what, like, I'll work with somebody who doesn't know the answer to something all day long if they're like honest about it, like, what, I don't know, but let me find out, and finds out and performs. That speaks more to me than somebody who knows everything already. So I really think it is just like what Moss said, is that intuition, that gut feeling, just how you jive with that person and how they respond to the needs you've already expressed at that point.
Yeah. Two things that you both touched on that I think are powerful. One, and I don't want this to be missed, is you both clearly have a buyer's interview. Okay, whatever you call it, you don't just work with the buyer. I mean, we all run it. We get a call to go see a property. Hey, listen, it's a fluid business and that can happen at times. But the reality of it is your overall business is all about, I sit down with my clients, I go through a process, it's consistent each time. Here's what we're going to do and here's what I'm going to do for you. And I love, you both mentioned having expectations on both sides. And I think that is really powerful. That buyer's interview gets skipped, I will tell you, as often as a buyer broker agreement gets skipped. And it's just a tragedy, because what you guys are doing, that interview process, is so valuable going forward. The other aspect is that you mentioned is just trusting your gut. Really listening, asking those questions, and going with your gut. Because most of us know sometimes we push forward even though our gut's telling us, I don't think this person is as genuine as I would like. And sometimes they go forward. They just need to trust their gut. And you know what? This is too big of a situation. The largest purchases you'll ever make in your entire life. You need just to be comfortable with that person and be able to trust them up front. So that's great.
Absolutely.
All right, let's switch kind of to the agent aspect. So what do you see? Okay, and you both work with different sales executives. Mas, you do because you have a brokerage within a brokerage. You have your team. And then, John, you work with agents on an ongoing basis, as you both do. What mistakes do you see agents make that hinders them from getting that buyer-broker agreement signed? John, why don't you take that?
Honestly, a lack of confidence, bottom line. Lack of confidence and maybe being too afraid to walk away from business. This was something that I struggled with in my first year in the business and maybe in my second, where, I needed business. And so I just wanted to take anything I could get. But, you learn the hard way. And after a few times of kind of getting burned, I realized I was like, you know what? My time is more valuable than that. I respect myself enough and I respect my client enough to do things properly. It's kind of like, would somebody go into a doctor to get a surgery and work with a doctor who's just like, oh, it's a surgery, it costs this much, awesome, let's do it tomorrow, right on. No, they're gonna have that interview process going. The doctor's going to demonstrate his knowledge, his skill, and expectations, right? And I think it's the same thing. Agents just oftentimes, I think, get blinded by, a possible deal, and they just want the deal, and they don't protect their time enough. And, our time's valuable. And when you work, for a couple weeks or a couple months, several hours a day or several hours a week, whatever it is, with a buyer who's not committed to you, it's just like, there's just no respect there. Like, kind of like, why do I work with somebody who doesn't respect me? So I think it starts with yourself, of respecting yourself, having confidence in yourself and your abilities, and being able just to take that leap of faith in the beginning where you might lose some business because you're kind of getting, your wits about how to talk about the buyer broker, but having that courage to just know that you're worth it and that you provide the service that they want. And you know what, if they're not going to meet these expectations, to just truly understand that you're better off, that now you can go and seek out clients who will respect your time. So I think the biggest challenge for most agents is that confidence in themselves and a respect for their own time, their own skill.
Yeah, it's awesome. Mas, anything to add to that?
Yeah, so what I like to add to that, and exactly what he said, John said, but it starts with their mindset. I think a lot of people, when they first start in the real estate industry, they come from the employee mindset, so they haven't learned to switch into the entrepreneurial mindset. And the entrepreneurial mindset, it starts with, the confidence to demonstrate value, and then learning to ask for the sale, because your time is worth more than so your like my time is $1,000 an hour worth of time. But it really starts with your mindset. And I think a lot of realtors, they like to compare themselves to other people. And I tell everyone, your only competition is with yourself. And that's why even, we are the number one team, like last 4 years, we're the number one team in Berkshire Hathaway. I don't even use my ego for anything that I do. I just explain to people that, when you have your mindset right and you build relationships with other team leaders, other agents, and just have the reputation of being a servant heart leader and do your job properly, then other people, other realtors will want to work with you. So it all starts with your mindset, switching over from the employee mindset to a business owner mindset and valuing your time.
1,000% agree with that. That's wow. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't touch on that. Good job, Mas. That is the biggest lesson I've learned in my whole career with real estate is your mindset controls everything, every little thing you do. So I think that's so on point. Is getting your mindset right is the foundation.
All right, so let me dig just a little deeper on this point. All right, so fear is a real emotion. Okay, it may be something that truthfully we create in our own head, and we do. Okay, fear's not real unless we give it reality, but it exists. So what advice would you have for an agent who says, okay, I hear what you're saying. Any tips on actual activities that you would advise if, okay, I am scared, but I do, I'm working on believing in myself, or I do believe in myself. What advice you would have to help them deal with that real fear that they're feeling in presenting a broker agreement? John, go ahead.
Well, I think it goes back to the number one principles I learned at Berkshire Hathaway when I first started, and that's role play and oh gosh, I lost the other one. Role play and just going out on the ledge and actually doing it. But role playing your verbiage, what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, I think is the number one way to build a little bit of confidence. Maybe try different people, etc. But bottom line, I think the most important. Oh, sorry, I remembered the other thing. Affirmations. Affirmations in the morning before a call, before an appointment is awesome, because what does that do? It gets your mindset right, and it really helps to reset. Maybe if you had some negative things going on in the day, if you pump yourself up with positive talk and good affirmations, that can go a long way, I really feel, in creating the confidence. But I think that getting comfortable with what to say, how to say it, is going to come from practice and repetition, bottom line. So either you can practice on your clients and take that leap of faith and, put yourself in a line of possible rejection to learn, or you can role play with other agents, your significant other, friends, or anything like that, so that you get a little bit more comfortable with the language.
Yeah, I will tell you, role play and affirmations are powerful, but doing it, like you said, getting out there and putting yourself out there, because, we worry about things that are never really going to happen. They're all here. And so I think that's great. Mas, what would you like to add to that?
I have 4 points that I want to touch. First, start with your why. So your why that makes you cry. Because when you start with your why, then you're going to be able to propel forward. Because real estate is a hot business. It's very emotional. I had clients that make me cry sometimes, and then agents that make me cry. But anyway, second thing is you want to start with your vision board. So you have to imagine it before it comes true. So vision board, post things on your vision board that you want for your children, for your family. And then number 3, this is pretty powerful, and it's a little bit deep, I think, but I am the mindset queen. So basically, this part right here is the ability to learn how to forgive yourself and forgive others. Because if you don't learn to forgive yourself and forgive others, then you're not going to be able to see the abundance in the world. It's going to block you from seeing that there is more abundance than scarcity. Because, when people hold on to anger or jealousy or things like that in nature, it hinders them in their ability to see that there is more abundance and prevent you from doing income producing activities. So number 4 is income producing activities. It's calling on the phone, calling your SOI, getting in touch, or when you make a transaction with another agent, calling them. When you close the transaction, sending a thank you note, just little things, little simple things, calling your past client. All 90% of my buyers always become my sellers because of the high level of connection that I give them. And, they become my friends, because when the transaction becomes that big, you have this connection with your client. So so 4 things, start with your why. Number 2, do your vision board. Number 3, learn to forgive yourself and others. Don't compare yourself to anyone. Your only competition is with yourself, and keep doing income producing activities. That's it.
I love it. Great job. John's clapping. I love it. I love it. That's great. Okay, so we'll close with this question. Clearly, I think you guys you've shared so many powerful ideas here. So let's take it home by sharing to sales executives, what are some of the risks they have? What are some of the really losses that they can see, or negatives, for lack of a better way to say this, if they don't commit to doing some of the activities and some of the things that you're bringing up to learn, okay, to utilize a buyer broker agreement effectively? What are some of the risks that they have? Mas, why don't you jump in?
Okay, well, I've seen some realtors working 10 months, and then their buyer goes to a builder and they never get paid, because they don't have that setting that expectations with their client. Hey, listen, my time is valuable. Let's sit down and have a discussion. And I always explain with my clients, once I sign a buyer broker agreement, I say, here's my cards, here are my business cards. If you go to the home builders, make sure that you tell them that you have a realtor so that I can negotiate for you. So again, it's about upgrading your skill sets, right? So and that takes time. I know some people are new to sales, but you want to protect your time, like John and I keep saying. What's going to happen? The risk is you work with somebody for 10 months and then they go to a home builder and then you don't get paid, and that's very painful. I've seen that happen several times to other agents.
Love it. John.
Absolutely, I would agree with that 100%. And I think it leads to a slippery slope of no standards. And I think having standards is very important, because without that, you'll always make an exception, and so you'll start here and exception, you'll be here, and then you'll make another exception, you'll be here and here and here, and now all of a sudden, all your clients are really wasting your time. They don't respect you. They're not serious, and you're just spinning wheels more and more and more and more. And I think that that's the danger is, yes, will you probably work with a buyer where you don't get a buyer broker? It happens. Like sometimes I will get a sphere of influence that slowly expresses interest in, buying or selling, but is really just in the beginning phases. And by the time it evolves, I'm like, oh my gosh, I never had a consultation or did a buyer broker, and stuff happens. But if that's your standard, if it's kind of like, you just don't do the buyer broker agreement at all, I think it's easy to start lowering your standards, and you're going to end up losing business, wasting time. You're not going to build relationships with the people that you do work with to where that they are repeat business, repeat clients, etc. And it's just going to be a waste of your time and energy and theirs, and it's going to cause a lot of frustration. Then your mindset goes negative. You start losing confidence in yourself. I just really think it is a slippery slope to eroding your business. And I mean, like for me, I've had the goal of always leveling up each year and trying to do better, getting more deals each year, getting the higher price point, working with less buyers that don't meet my standards 100%, and kind of honing that in more and more and more so that my business gets more efficient, more profitable, and my experience working with buyers and other agents gets better, right? And I think that without the buyer broker agreement, it's just the toe in the door of mediocrity, to where it just is easy to lose your standards and not really excel.
Yeah. You know what? So powerful. I mean, when you think about just one concept can really, and for lack of a better word, destroy, and I like your word, John, erode your business over time. That's scary not to put that in place.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts from either one of you on this? You shared so many great nuggets today. Anything else that you'd like to share or bring up that we didn't cover?
Yeah, I'd like to share with everyone here who's at Berkshire Hathaway, make friends with your Berkshire Hathaway agents. I mean, we're all on the same team. I know it's a healthy competition, but what we're all doing is we want to do what's best for our clients. And then it'll help you with, multiple offer scenario, just building that rapport with the other listing agent, the buyer agent, and then your reputation is going to go higher and higher. And that's what happened with my last offer. I had it was multiple offer scenario, but because I have a relationship with the listing agent and my buyer was a really strong buyer, I was able to win that offer over everybody else because I do communicate very well. I do build rapport with the listing agent, and they already know the high level of service that I give to my clients. So, like I say, network with other Berkshire agents, and make friends with everybody.
Great.
I can second that. That's an amazing point. You catch more flies with honey. And I think it's really key in transactions to remove your ego and just to really be as cordial with the other agent as possible. Even when you want to wring their neck, don't. Remember that, you don't know where they're coming from or what they've been dealing with. And just know that, reputation does matter. I'm a firm believer in that as well. Vegas is a pretty small town. And it's funny, the agent names that I see over and over again. And when I see somebody who sends an offer that I've worked with before that I like, I'm just like so much happier and so much more willing to kind of work things out. I think that's very true. You don't want to burn any bridges, and you always want to help everywhere. And I think that goes back to Moss's servant leadership point of view, which is absolutely amazing, is that, you're there to serve everybody. You're there to serve, but also the other agents, your escrow officers, your lenders, everything like that. And it doesn't do anything but good if you are friendly, helpful, and courteous to your fellow, professionals. It only can do good things in unquantifiable ways that I can't even go over now, but it will pay off dividends down the road as well. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, so agree. Thank you both once again. Phenomenal job. We're getting incredibly positive comments. So appreciate your time. I know from your comments there will be more sales executives, that utilize a buyer broker agreement. Appreciate everyone's time. I do want to ask everyone, please like what you heard today and share it. That really helps get our messages out as a company, and I really would appreciate that. Next week, we're going to be talking about some leadership and life lessons that I know you will enjoy. Again, have a great week, everybody, and appreciate everyone's time. See you later.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Everyone, thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.